All right, guys, good afternoon. My name's PJ Bradford. I'm a Gallatin Fire Lieutenant. Today we're going to be talking about the fundamentals of salvage and overhaul and the importance of those things. And we're also going to learn a skill about how to open up a wall just to check for fire extinction and smoke and smolder and things like that, just to make sure that the fire's completely out. So a little bit about me. I've been with the Gallatin Fire Department going on 11 years now. Been a firefighter or in the fire service for going on 20. I'm also an EMT. I work on an ambulance also, so I'm kind of got a lot of skill sets throughout the EMS and fire service altogether. So I'm glad to be here today. At the end of this class, hopefully you guys will have a better grasp on what to expect doing one of the tasks that's probably one of the more undesirable things in the fire service. Everyone loves the fact that we get to fight fire and spray water and tear things up, but after all that hard work is done, the real hard work happens, and that's when we have to tear out walls, go up in the ceiling, get under the crawl spaces and places like that, just to make sure that the fire is out. Because anybody that's been in the fire service any length of time that's had to go back for a rekindle, they understand how terrible it is to put the fire out and think that everything is great, and then at 2 o'clock in the morning have to go back and get dirty again, pull all the hoses that you've put on, get all the tools back out, knowing that you're going to have to do this and clean it all up again. So it's one of the more important things that kind of gets pushed aside as far as I am concerned. To get started, what we need to do is we need to think about where do we look to make sure everything is good, make sure all the fire's out and stuff like that. So today we're just going to talk about the different areas that you would need to look. Like I said a while ago, the most important thing is to make sure the fire's completely out. You want to make sure that you've put enough water on it, that you've exposed everything that could possibly have fire. There's different places like the utility shafts, pipe chases. Pipe chases are the areas in the wall where they run electrical, they run plumbing, they run exhaust fans, even around your dryers, washing machine and dryers. A lot of times in your apartment complexes and buildings, they'll have the exhaust from your dryer run through the wall up into the ceiling and out through the roof, which is areas that fire can get, heat can get, that you wouldn't see if you don't expose those areas. So we want to make sure that we check all of those. We want to check in places like the vents around the floor. We want to check around light switches, anywhere that could give us some kind of sign that there is possible fire or smoke or anything trapped inside there. When it comes to residential, like your wood frame and ordinary construction stuff, I like to think about, yes, we're in the business of saving property, but we've also got to make sure that we've done our job correctly. So sometimes it'll feel like we're tearing up somebody's stuff, and that's not the case, especially if there's been a fire, because there's going to have to be construction done. There's going to have to be insurance that comes into play, and they're going to have to fix a lot of the stuff from the fire anyway. So it's better to make sure by taking out a little bit extra of a wall, or removing a door, or opening up the floor, or going up into the ceiling, pulling ceiling down, things like that. We're going to get a little bit more into that as we go, just to make sure that all the fire is out. Because what we are able to save, whether it be someone's furniture, someone's pictures, someone's family heirlooms, their clothing, their normal just everyday needs, those little things make a difference. And if we're not able to make sure that the fire's out, then they're going to lose the rest of their stuff, right? Because more than likely nobody's going to be there when it rekindles. We're going to be back at the station and cleaned up, possibly asleep, especially if it happens back in the middle of the night, because a lot of times your rekindles can slow burn for a long time before anybody notices that it's caught back fire. And a lot of times by the time we get called, it's fully involved and it's blowing up and everything is gone. So it's really an important thing. You also have your different kind of constructions. The first one I'm going to talk about right here is balloon construction. And for those of y'all that aren't familiar with it, it's where, like if you got a 2-story, and a long time ago they would build the first floor and they'd build a floor on top of it. And they would build the second floor. Nowadays, because of just advances in construction, they do what's called balloon construction. So if you were to take the wall out, it's just a straight pass from ground or from the basement all the way to the roof. So a lot of times fire can get inside of those walls or any of those chases, and it can run up to the second floor. And we may come in and think that it's just a simple room and contents, put the fire out, and the whole time it had gotten in through a wall outlet, it got in through a vent, especially if central heat and air units run up through the wall sometimes they're in chases around the ceiling, different things like that that we don't see. And if we don't check for that, then there's a chance that it could continue to burn long after we're gone. We want to make sure that there's no fire on the other floors. We want to make sure that there's not any in the ceiling. We want to make sure that it hasn't gone to a neighbor's house if it's a duplex or an apartment building. And that kind of leads me into also that some of the newer construction is got what they call it's like a fire retardant caulk or a seal, and now codes, at least here in the city, require that that the construction guys make sure that they cover all the holes. That they have stuff that runs from one floor to the other, they have to fill those in with a Captain Mendoza, what is that caulk called? Is it just fire caulk?
Fire stop.
Fire stop. Okay, that's a brand of stuff that they squirt around the holes to stop it if it was to get inside the wall and run up there. So it's just an added layer of protection, but that doesn't mean that there's not, because there's still pipes and there's still wires running through that. It's just going to help slow it down. So we've got to make sure that we check everywhere, and especially in your balloon construction type buildings.
So if we had a balloon frame
Mhm.
and like the bottom floor burnt on it, and we found out it was a balloon frame,
Mhm.
would we also want to check, I guess, above, like the next floor, even if there was no signs like on the wall? Could
Yeah.
it possibly be up there?
It could be, yeah. It could run up in there and you don't even know. So especially if it's an exterior wall, because what's inside exterior walls?
Inside an exterior
Yeah.
wall? And you got interior walls inside. But I mean, honestly, I don't know.
Okay, so what I was looking for is you got insulation. You got insulation, and depending on the age of the house, some of your older homes, which we have in the city, you don't know what they used 100 years ago, 120 years ago. It could be newspaper, it could be just any kind of something that they would use to shove and make some kind of insulation inside those walls, and we don't know it until we open it up to expose that. The times that I've done salvage and overhaul, I always think about opening where the fire was and then going past that. I want to make sure that I get to the place where the studs are not burned, where the wall is not burned, where I don't see any smoke damage and things like that. And once I reach that point, that's when I'll stop at that place, and then I'll go to the next place. That doesn't mean go to every single room and bust walls out, take ceilings out. If there's no fire, there's no damage. Once you get past a certain area and you start seeing the unburned area, this place where there's no smoke damage and things like that, that's when you know that, hey, I've done what I'm supposed to do. I've made sure that the fire was out. You also, kind of like what I was saying, you want to look for void spaces, whether it be in the walls. It could be dumbwaiters that have been closed up in a wall. You don't know in some of the older houses. And a lot of the new ones, similar to what we were talking about before class, was that these new constructions, they're so chopped up and they're all about the open floor plan that they'll create a wall that'll have a void space that you don't even know it's there, because they needed that extra protection or that extra load-bearing spot to keep it from having to extend out to the room. So there's void spaces that we don't even know about that we need to check. You want to look at false doors. We actually have 2 apartments in this local nursing home here that from the hallway there's 2 doors, but one doesn't open, and if you opened it up you would just see a wall, because they actually had tore a wall down and made it into a suite to where it's multiple rooms inside an apartment, and you wouldn't know it until you got inside. So you got to look for false doors. You got to look for false ceilings, similar to like in an office building. You want to make sure that you open the ceiling tiles, that you want to check and make sure that there's no smoke and there's no fire inside there, because this can hide it a lot. You also want to think about false roofs. I know that there's multiple businesses here in town that were old buildings, and when a new business bought it and they wanted to fix it up, they actually created a different roof on top of it, so they could be fire trapped in between the actual roof and the false roof, and if we don't check that, we're never going to know until it's too late. So you definitely want to keep an eye on those kind of things and check those too. The kind of things that you see right here that we would use to see that is just what I like to think of as just common sense. You know, you want to use your senses. You want to use your eyes, your ears, your nose, just your sense of touch. You want to look for things like the smoke. You want to look for embers, especially if it's night. During the day, if it's bright, it's kind of hard to see those kind of things. So you look for things like smoke during the day. But if it's dark, if it's in an area at night, or if it's in a house that the electricity's been turned off, so you want to look in the dark areas for glowing embers. You want to see things moving. When you start stirring stuff up, do embers float up in the air, kind of like a campfire at night, right? You want to look at the burned areas and the unburned areas. You want to check and make sure. And if you're not sure, kind of like what I was saying earlier about taking it past the area of burn, you still want to check past that, because who knows where that fire came from. If it's coming from under the house, it may have skipped an area. So without tearing out every single piece of drywall, what are some ways that we can check to see if it's gotten any further? Firefighter Navarro, what's something else we can do?
Just keep looking. You said other than taking out walls, just keep looking. And like you said, embers.
Camera.
Yeah,
Okay,
that too.
yep. And we're going to get to the thermal imaging camera. Right now, what I'm kind of thinking about is we can use our touch, right? We can touch with the back of our hand, and we can check those things. See if the wall is hot. We can look for peeling paint. We can listen for popping sounds, crackling sounds that you may not even know that are there, because it's in an interior wall or behind a cabinet. If there's a kitchen fire and you check the counter and the counter's super hot, open a cabinet, check in all of those. If you're not sure, if it's burned up behind the stove, pull that cabinet off the wall. I know it seems like it's destruction, but we're actually saving property by doing this. So, of course, save everything you can, but at the same time, we've got to make sure that the fire is out. You know, you'll want to, like I said, listen for crackling sounds, hissing sounds, using the back of your hand, checking those things. Thermal imaging camera, like Captain Hall said, that is a valuable tool that's come into the fire service over the last 15 years or so, and nowadays guys couldn't even imagine doing their job without it. It makes it that much easier, and it makes us that more proficient. So utilize that. Make sure that you have one, or somebody on your crew has one at every fire, because not only does it help us with that, we also know it helps us find people. It helps keep us safe, right? And it helps you identify areas that maybe don't have visual signs of a burn, right? So we're going to go here in just a second. We're going to talk a little bit about opening up a wall, okay? It's one of the most basic things that you can do as a firefighter. It doesn't take any specialized type of training that you have to get certified for. It's about using common sense and putting into practice what we just now talked about. So let me pull this slideshow up right here. Okay. So at the end of this part of the class, Alright, so we're going to talk about opening up a wall. What are some of the different tools that we can use to open up a wall? John?
You'd use a hook.
Okay.
You'd use sledgehammer,
Okay.
axe, like flathead axe,
Okay.
big head axe.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we can use a lot of those things. A lot of times we all go in, we carry, our set of irons that has a Halligan bar, has a pighead axe, right? those two are, the reason they're so common is because they're so versatile. We can use it for multiple things, opening doors, taking ceilings. We can use it for opening walls, and you can use it for removing trim, things like that. So, but today we're going to talk about using the pick head axe and a Halligan, just like a set of irons. Most of the time, somebody on your team is going to have one. So it's good to practice with that, and then after the class, we'll go outside and we'll actually put it into practice. Okay. So we're going to determine which area of wall needs to be open. Kind of like what I was saying, you're going to find the area that's been burned, and then you're going to want to go past that to the point where you're not seeing any more burned surface. And sometimes it feels like you're destroying this. We want to do it as easy as possible, and we want to do it as safe as possible and preserving as much as possible. Especially if there's going to possibly be an investigation or something like that. So save as much as you can, because it's going to make the next guy's job easier, and it's going to save as much of their property as possible. So you're going to, once you determine this is the area that needs to be exposed, you can take the axe blade, and you can do similar to the way that we learned in our extrication class, that you can take it, I know firefighter Navarro was present for that. You take it and you want to hack away. You want to find a stud, and a lot of times after a fire you can look for signs of a stud, whether it be nail pops in a wall. You can see a lot of times once the drywall has been heated up and flexed, it'll start popping off by the heads of the nails, and you can see that there's a stud right there. A lot of times it'll be discolored because it'll be hotter on each side of the stud, and that'll give you a telltale sign. If you have a thermal imaging camera, a lot of times the heat will be trapped in between the studs, and that'll help you to determine where you need to open up at. So you can take and you can use your the sharp edge of the axe, the blade, and you can hack down through there, and you'll start up high and you want to work your way down. And if you start seeing smoke come out, you already know that there's heat and there's possibly fire inside there, right? So then you'll work down and you'll cut that section out. And then what you can do is then you can take the pick part of it and you can actually start pulling it down. If you start hitting it with just the pick part, you're just going to be poking a bunch of holes in it, right? So by cutting on each side and then using your pick to pull it down, that's going to help it move faster. It's also going to keep you from being wild and swinging an axe and things like that. So you definitely want to get that done. And like I said, start up top and work your way down. Use the pick end of the axe to pull the wall away from the studs. Continue opening it until you get to where it's unburned, right? So having it to where it's unburned is going to help you make sure that you've got all the fire out, right? Do we have any questions? Is there anything that maybe I didn't cover or that you guys are wondering about? We're pretty good about everything? Okay, well that's good. We do have a written test that we're going to do, okay? So we'll get that done, and then we'll go outside and we will do our skills check off and make sure that everybody feels comfortable with it. And if we have any questions out there, then we'll just kind of address them out there. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys. So after we finished our classroom portion of this, we decided to come out here and do a little bit of hands-on stuff, go over some of the different tools and the different applications that they may be used for. I've got John here. He's going to assist me in talking about the tools to kind of show you guys the way that we're supposed to hold them and the different ways we could use them, okay? So there really is a lot of different kind of tools that we could use to take walls, push ceilings, and depending on the size of guy you are, is sometimes depending on what tool you're going to grab. Also, things that make a difference, like the height of a ceiling. You know, so if you're wanting to check inside a false ceiling area, you know, you would go for something like this. So if you would, John, hold this for me. That's a New York hook. People call it different things. That's what we call it, as a New York hook. You can also use a 6-foot pike pole, 10-foot pike pole, just depending on how tall the ceiling is. And what you would do, John, is you would reach up with it, and you can actually lift up ceiling tiles to check up under it, right? If you needed to pull something heavy down, like some sheetrock in a residential type setting, then that's got enough power too that you could shove it through the ceiling and use these hooks right here to actually pull down part of the ceiling. So it's very versatile. You also have this end right here that's good for driving it through walls, taking doors with it, things like that. It's got a lot of weight with it, so it works well for those kind of things. This is one that may not be as common to some people. And this right here, I've always been told it was a trash hook. It's got a couple of different tools on it. It's got a handle down here, and it works good to grab things and pull. It also works to shove it through walls, turn it, rip drywall. It'll actually help you pull things like if there's any kind of flooring or carpet that you could actually move around. If you're tall enough, like a guy like John, you can use it to get up in the ceiling or things like that, pull down walls. We also have the pick head axe, which is what I was talking about earlier in the classroom. You've got the blade side and you've got the pick side. So John, like I was kind of illustrating in there, you would use this side to actually chop along the stud on both sides, and you would turn it around and you'd actually hook up in there and use this side to pull the drywall down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. They're normally pretty heavy too, so you're going to get wore out pretty quick with it, but it definitely does great things. And last, as an example today, we're gonna show a set of irons, good old trusty set of irons. You've got a flathead axe and you've got a Halligan bar. The blade on this axe is going to work the same way, right? And you also have the top of this that you can use to drive into a wall if you need to, and you can cut with this. Now on the Halligan, it works great for removing things like door jambs, the trim around doorways, around baseboards to get in there and pull that out, right? It also can help you remove outlet covers and things like that that you actually need to get a little bit behind, and actually pull it off. So it works wonders as well, and it also pries in behind doors. Lots of things that it can help with removal of doors. So it's a very, very versatile set of tools. But all of those things work great, and if you're going to be training with them on your overhaul exercises, definitely try to use all of them. See which one works best for you and which application you like for each different part of a house.